How to learn words. Leo often stared at the ceiling, a heavy sigh escaping his lips. English, he thought, was an impenetrable fortress, guarding secrets he desperately wanted to unlock. He yearned to express himself, to connect with the world beyond his native tongue, but a paralyzing fear gripped him tightly. Every attempt felt like scaling a slippery wall, only to fall back down, defeated and disheartened by the effort. The frustration simmered beneath his quiet exterior, a constant reminder of his linguistic limitations. He would meticulously learn new vocabulary words, spending hours memorizing lists, only to find them vanishing from his memory the very next day. This cycle of effort and disappointment chipped away at his motivation, making him question if he truly possessed the ability to learn English effectively. How to learn words, he'd whisper to himself, his voice barely audible in the empty room. The answer seemed perpetually out of reach, a phantom that eluded his grasp. He tried apps, flashcards, even sticky notes plastered around his apartment, yet the words refused to stick, remaining fleeting shadows in his mind's linguistic landscape, frustrating his earnest endeavors significantly. His biggest nemesis, however, was the fear of making mistakes. The mere thought of mispronouncing a word or misusing grammar in front of others sent shivers down his spine. He envisioned judgmental stares, muffled laughter, and the crushing weight of embarrassment. This irrational anxiety silenced him, trapping his thoughts and opinions behind a wall of linguistic insecurity, making interaction impossible. I don't want to make mistakes, but I always do. Why? This question echoed in his mind, a relentless loop of self-criticism. He saw every error as a monumental failure, not a stepping stone. This perfectionism paralyzed him, preventing him from even attempting to speak, creating a vicious cycle where his fear perpetuated his lack of progress, isolating him further. Talking with anyone, especially in English, felt like an impossible feat. His mind would go blank, his throat would tighten, and all the words he knew would suddenly evaporate. He envied those who conversed effortlessly, their words flowing like a river, while his own felt like jagged rocks obstructing any natural current of communication, causing immense frustration. He longed for that fluidity, that uninhibited expression, but the bridge to achieving it seemed broken. Social gatherings became arenas of anxiety, where he'd retreat into himself, nodding politely but rarely contributing. This silent withdrawal only deepened his sense of isolation, reinforcing the idea that he was somehow incapable of mastering this crucial global skill. Then, one quiet evening, staring at his reflection, a strange thought surfaced: how to talk at home to yourself. It seemed ludicrous at first, talking to thin air, but the idea, free from external judgment, held a peculiar appeal. He wouldn't embarrass himself if he made a mistake, as no one was listening except his reflection. He decided to give it a try, tentatively at first. Standing in front of the mirror, he began describing his day, stumble by stumble. I went to the market today. It felt awkward, almost childish, but a tiny spark ignited within him. There was no pressure, no performance, just raw, unedited practice occurring solely for his benefit. He continued this private ritual daily, talking about anything that came to mind, his favorite book, the weather, his dreams. These solo conversations became his personal linguistic laboratory. He mispronounced words, fumbled grammar, but crucially, no one was there to witness his struggles, fostering a safe space for uninhibited growth and experimentation. This self-talk was a revelation. It allowed him to articulate thoughts, to string sentences together without the immediate pressure of an audience. He started noticing the gaps in his vocabulary, the grammatical structures he struggled with, and slowly, his internal editor began to shift from a judge to a helpful guide, providing invaluable feedback. He realized that making mistakes was an inherent part of the learning process. Each stumble was a signpost, highlighting an area for improvement, not a definitive failure. This paradigm shift was liberating. The fear began to recede, replaced by a curious eagerness to experiment and discover, pushing him forward with renewed determination to try. But speaking was only one half of the equation. How to improve your listening skills, he pondered, recognizing that comprehension was equally vital for genuine communication. He had always associated listening with passive absorption, but a deeper understanding proved to be essential for effective reciprocal interaction, truly bridging the communication gap. He started with podcasts, choosing topics he genuinely found interesting, even if they were slightly above his current comprehension level. At first, it was a cacophony of unfamiliar sounds, a blur of rapid-fire speech. He caught only snippets, feeling overwhelmed by the sheer volume of information being presented rapidly. He resisted the urge to look up every single word. Instead, he focused on identifying the main idea, the overall gist of the conversation. He listened actively, trying to infer meaning from context, pausing and replaying sections when he felt utterly lost. This patient approach slowly started to yield small, but noticeable, improvements in understanding. Then came the concept of listen and practice, a powerful combination he discovered online. It wasn't just about passive listening, it was about active engagement. He started shadowing, repeating sentences immediately after the speaker, mimicking their intonation, rhythm, and pronunciation, truly immersing himself in the sounds of English. This shadowing technique was challenging but incredibly effective. His tongue felt clumsy, his mouth unaccustomed to the new sounds, but with persistent effort, he felt his pronunciation improving. It was like training a muscle. The more he used it, the stronger and more flexible it became, allowing greater articulation. Why you must listen became a mantra. Listening wasn't just about understanding words, it was about absorbing the music of the language, the natural flow of conversation, the nuances of expression. It provided the input necessary for his brain to unconsciously grasp grammatical patterns and idiomatic expressions, accelerating his learning curve dramatically. He diversified his listening sources, documentaries, interviews, even stand-up comedy. He chose content that resonated with his interests, making the learning process enjoyable rather than a chore. This sustained exposure to authentic English, rather than just textbook dialogues, immersed him in the language's natural cadence and vocabulary. The way of learning English for Leo transformed from rote memorization and fear-driven avoidance to an active, engaging, and enjoyable journey of discovery. He realized that language learning was not a linear path but a complex, interconnected web of speaking, listening, reading, and writing, all feeding into each other seamlessly. He also started paying attention to common phrases and collocations, not just individual words. Instead of learning make and decision separately, he learned make a decision as a single unit. This approach made his speech sound more natural and fluent, reducing the mental effort required to construct sentences on the fly. His private self-talk sessions became more sophisticated. He'd hold imaginary conversations, debating topics, telling stories, and even practicing presentations. This mental rehearsal built confidence and fluency, preparing him for real-life interactions by allowing him to preemptively navigate potential linguistic challenges in a safe environment. The fear of making mistakes, though not entirely gone, had diminished considerably. He saw them now as learning opportunities, not as marks of shame. When he stumbled, he'd acknowledge it, correct himself if possible, and move on, understanding that progress was more important than flawless execution in every single instance. Encouraged by his progress, Leo decided it was time to put his newfound skills to the test in the real world. This was the terrifying leap, the moment of truth he had long dreaded. He knew that interacting with actual people was the ultimate crucible for language acquisition, forcing him to adapt quickly. He started small, with simple interactions at a local coffee shop. "Can I have a black coffee, please?" His voice trembled slightly, but the barista understood him perfectly. That small success, that fleeting moment of successful communication, felt like a monumental victory, fueling his desire for more interaction. Next, he joined an online language exchange group. The initial video calls were nerve-wracking. He stammered, struggled to find words, and often resorted to gestures. But his partners were patient and encouraging, understanding his struggles as part of the shared journey of language learning, fostering a supportive atmosphere. He learned to embrace the awkwardness, to laugh at his own linguistic blunders. He realized that most people were far more interested in understanding him than in judging his grammar. This shift in perspective freed him from the suffocating grip of perfectionism, allowing him to simply focus on conveying his message. His listening skills continued to sharpen. He could now follow longer conversations, pick up on subtle cues, and even understand different accents. The world of English content, once a confusing blur, was slowly opening up to him, revealing layers of meaning he had previously missed completely. He started watching English movies and TV shows without subtitles, or with English subtitles only. It was challenging at first, but each viewing session incrementally improved his comprehension. He discovered how real conversations flowed, how humor was expressed, and how cultural nuances shaped communication naturally. Learning words became a more organic process. Instead of isolated memorization, he encountered them in context, through listening and reading. He kept a digital notebook, jotting down new words and phrases, along with example sentences that truly illustrated their usage, reinforcing understanding effectively. He revisited his vocabulary lists, but this time, he practiced using the words in his self-talk and actual conversations. Active recall and application proved far more effective than passive review, solidifying the words in his long-term memory, ensuring they were readily available for spontaneous use during conversation. The more he talked, the more comfortable he became with making errors. He'd often ask for clarification or correction from his language partners, turning mistakes into direct learning opportunities. This proactive approach accelerated his improvement, as he was actively seeking feedback to refine his linguistic output. His confidence soared. He no longer hesitated to initiate conversations or participate in discussions. The fear of judgment had largely evaporated, replaced by an eagerness to connect and share ideas. He realized that true communication transcended perfect grammar. It was about genuine human connection and expression. He started noticing his progress not just in his speaking fluency, but in his ability to think in English. Sentences would form in his mind directly, without the need for translation from his native language. This breakthrough was monumental, signaling a deeper integration of English into his cognitive processes. His journey was not without its plateaus and moments of doubt, but he had developed resilience. He knew that consistency and patience were key. Even on days when he felt unmotivated, he'd still commit to at least a few minutes of listening or self-talk, maintaining momentum steadily. He understood that mastering a language was a marathon, not a sprint. There would always be new words to learn, new nuances to grasp, but the process itself had become immensely rewarding. He found joy in every small victory, every successful interaction, every new piece of understanding gained. Leo, once a silent observer, became an active participant in his own linguistic journey. He discovered that the way of learning English was deeply personal, requiring self-awareness and a willingness to adapt methods to suit one's own learning style. There was no single magic bullet, but rather a combination of diligent efforts. He reflected on his initial struggles, the paralysis caused by his fear of mistakes. Now, he saw those early anxieties as essential steps in his growth, proving that overcoming internal barriers was just as crucial as mastering vocabulary or grammar, truly liberating his potential for communication. His ability to talk in English had transformed his life in unexpected ways. He could now enjoy international films without relying on subtitles, read articles from global news sources, and connect with people from diverse backgrounds, broadening his horizons immensely, fostering incredible personal and professional growth. He even found himself offering advice to others who were just starting their English learning journeys. "Talk to yourself," he'd tell them, "and listen, listen, listen. Don't be afraid to make mistakes, they are your best teachers." His own experience provided invaluable, relatable wisdom and encouragement. His listening skills were now so refined that he could understand complex conversations, even those with multiple speakers and fast-paced dialogue. He could differentiate subtle accents and identify emotions conveyed through tone, giving him a deeper appreciation for the intricacies of human communication, greatly enhancing his overall comprehension. The "how to talk in English" question no longer felt like an insurmountable obstacle, but a continuous opportunity. Each conversation was a chance to refine his skills, to experiment with new expressions, and to solidify his understanding of the language in a dynamic, real-world context, fostering perpetual growth. He practiced active listening, not just waiting for his turn to speak, but truly absorbing what others were saying. This made him a better conversationalist, allowing him to respond thoughtfully and appropriately, fostering deeper connections with the people he interacted with daily, proving invaluable. Learning new words became an exciting detective game. He'd encounter them in books, songs, or conversations, and instead of just memorizing, he'd explore their etymology, their various uses, and their synonyms, building a rich, interconnected web of vocabulary in his mind, aiding in long-term retention. He started reading English novels, immersing himself in different narratives and literary styles. This not only expanded his vocabulary but also exposed him to more sophisticated sentence structures and cultural references, refining his understanding of written English and its nuanced expressions. The transformation was complete. Leo, who once cowered from English conversations, now confidently engaged with anyone, anywhere. His fear of mistakes had transformed into a healthy respect for the learning process, understanding that imperfections were simply proof of his ongoing efforts and brave attempts. He traveled to English-speaking countries, experiencing genuine immersion. He ordered food, asked for directions, and held spontaneous conversations with locals, something he never dared to dream of before. Each interaction, no matter how brief, solidified his belief in his own capability and progress. His personal narrative had shifted from one of struggle to one of triumph. He was no longer defined by his linguistic limitations but by his perseverance and newfound ability to communicate across cultures, bridging gaps and building connections with ease and genuine enjoyment. The journey had taught him that language learning was more than just acquiring a skill, it was a profound personal growth experience. It challenged his assumptions, expanded his worldview, and ultimately made him a more confident, adaptable, and empathetic individual, truly a life-changing endeavor. He continued to advocate for the power of self-talk and active listening. These two simple practices, combined with a willingness to make and learn from mistakes, were the cornerstones of his remarkable transformation, proving that consistent, mindful effort yields extraordinary results in language acquisition. His initial question, "Why do I always make mistakes?" was now answered with a smile. Because mistakes are opportunities. They are the friction that creates growth, the signposts on the road to fluency, guiding every learner towards clearer, more precise, and more confident communication in English. Leo's story became an inspiration, a testament to what is possible when one combines dedication with smart strategies. He demonstrated that fluency isn't about perfection, but about effective communication and the courage to engage, regardless of initial challenges encountered. He often shared his way of learning English with eager listeners. He emphasized consistency, finding genuine interest in the content, and creating a judgment-free zone for practice. These principles, he believed, were universally applicable to anyone seeking linguistic mastery and confidence. The world, once confined by his linguistic barriers, had now opened up immeasurably. New friendships, career opportunities, and cultural insights flowed freely into his life, all thanks to his unwavering commitment to learning English and overcoming his deep-seated fears. And so, Leo, the once timid English learner, stood tall, a beacon of what dedicated practice and a fearless approach to mistakes could achieve. His journey underscored the profound truth: language is not just words, but a bridge to an entirely new world of possibilities and connections.